Hi, grade 12s. We're here to do maths literacy today, and we're doing the topic of finance. Now, finance is very practical, and of course, in the long run, it can save you a lot of money. There's things that we're studying in mathematical literacy under finance that will, in fact, benefit you after you've left school. But for the moment, let's focus on what you're going to be asked in the exam. You need to make sure that you can do the following things. You need to make sure that before the exams, you revise very carefully how to interpret different financial documents, and those include tariff systems. So that could be from a bank statement, it could be a salary slip, it could be a shopping list, it could be a whole lot of different financial statements, whether it's a cell phone bill or an electricity bill that's a tariff-related one. Make sure that you're familiar with where things are and how they work together. You'll see we'll do some of those table type examples a little later. You should be able to make sure that you're able to draw a graph and interpret graphs of income and expenditure. Now that's the basis of business finance. You need to know how much money it's going to cost to run the business, and you're going to need to project how much money I need to get in, the income. You also need to be able to show when you're making a profit, a loss, or you're reaching the break-even point. That's when you're not making profit or loss. So that's all business related. Also remember that you need to recognize the importance of interest calculations. These could be for loans or for savings. Make sure you've got the understanding of what interest is and how to calculate it. We'll go through some of those. So calculate interest earned on an investment or a loan. You also need to know how to evaluate a hire purchase agreement. So in other words, check and see whether it's worthwhile. Should I rather save, or should I make this deposit and pay it off over time? Now sometimes those are unavoidable, particularly for very large items like cars and houses, and you need to be very familiar with that. You also need to be able to analyze all sorts of information that comes in the form of tables and graphs, particularly that relating to inflation. Now remember what inflation is. It's that measurement of an average set of goods, sample of goods, and it projects how much the price of that average price is going to change over a period of time. So the Reserve Bank tries to target inflation in South Africa to sit between 3% and 5%. Now that doesn't mean it always is that. They try and adjust monetary policy to make sure that it fits between 3% and 5%, which means that from year to year, the set of goods that they look at should only increase by between 3% and 5% every year. Now, we need to understand that sometimes it might be 5%, and then the inflation rate might decrease. It might be 4%. It still means that the price of the goods is going up even though the rate of inflation is decreasing. Now, the last section that you need to, or the second to last section that's also extremely important, is that dealing with personal income tax and tax tables. We might not get to all of these examples of all of these points in this session, but please make sure you revise them before you go into the exam. And the last thing is exchange rates. Know how to make conversions between different currencies given exchange rates. Because if you go on an overseas holiday, you're going to need to exchange your money. You want to make sure that when you see a one in a shop that's not in South Africa, what that actually means. What's the value of that? And if you're in Korea, it could be something very different than if you were in the United States of America, and you'd have to compare. How much am I actually spending? For that, you need to understand what exchange rates are all about. Okay, well, that's enough of an introduction and a checklist. I hope you go through each of those points and revise, make some notes. But now let's get into the exam questions. We're going to start off with a question that was adapted from the February 2014 paper, and it's a paper 1 question, but it's got a nice little bit at the end that we'll pick out and expand on. So you'll see that paper 1 or paper 2, you still have to know your stuff. You have to be able to look at the information you're given and interpret and work carefully through the calculations. Let's get going though. So it talks about in the beginning about deciduous fruits, and one of the important ones is peaches. The peach industry creates job opportunities, and it's regulated. Wages are regulated by South African labor law. Farm workers generally work, now let's pick out the important information, 9 hours a day, 5 days a week, and table 1 below shows us the minimum wages for farm workers for the period the 1st of March 2009, 1st of March 2011. And there you can see you've got the year is given in the table, then the hourly rate, then the weekly rate, and then the monthly rate. Now, this should not be a difficult exercise to absorb and to take a careful look at what's been given. Simple table categorizing information, but there's a bit of missing information. And so immediately the first question is, let's calculate the missing value of A. So what was A? A is the weekly rate of pay, the weekly rate for 2009. Now, how are we going to do that? We are given the hourly rate and we want to get the weekly rate. Well, how many hours do the workers work for? They usually work for 9 hours a day and 5 days a week. So we're going to say 9 times 5 times the hourly rate. And the hourly rate is 6 Rand and 31 cents. Now, I'm not going to even attempt to do that in my head. It'd be really foolish. Let's get the calculator out. We're going to put in 9 times 5 times that value of 6,31, and that gives us, in a decimal format, 283 Rand and 95 cents. So let's write that down, 283 Rand and 95 cents. And if we look at where that value fits on the table, it does seem to make sense. It's not bigger than the next year, and it's not a whole lot smaller either. So it does seem to make sense that it is about the right value. Now, you can check your answers and make sure that it is correct by comparing what's happened in the other rows. Did they also increase by the same amount? In other words, it was the hourly rate multiplied by 45. And they might not even have given you the 45, the 5 hours a day, 5 days a week, 9 hours a day. They could just have given you the table and you'd have to have worked it out. Let's go on to the next question now. And we're going to see that we need to calculate the value of B in the table. But they've been kind to us. The examiner's been very kind to us. He's even given us the formula to work out the monthly rate. And that's where value B is. We're looking to the monthly rate. What if they hadn't given you the formula? Well, what you would be able to do is you'd be able to take this value here, which is the weekly rate, and you'd be able to take this value here, which is the monthly rate. Take the monthly rate and divide it by the weekly rate, and that would give you a factor. Whatever you do to the one line, you'd have to do to the other. And if you do that, you'd then be able to calculate B. We'll see if we've got time to perhaps look at that particular calculation. Now, here we go. We're going to fill in the values. We're told to, first of all, write down the monthly rate is the weekly rate in Rand multiplied by 13. So for B, it's 303 Rand and 30 cents. So it's 303 Rand and 30 cents multiplied by 13 and divide that all by 3. Now guys, remember your order of operations here. You've got to be very careful. Make sure that you get it right. You can remember the rules of BODMAS, and in this case, we're going to make sure that we don't just get confused about where that divide is going in. So if we do this, get the calculator up, again, don't guess. We're just going to put it onto the calculator, 300, make sure you enter it correctly, 303 Rand and 30 cents, multiplied by 13, and divide that whole thing by 3. Multiplication and division, they're of the same order. We don't have too many alarm bells, but remember, when you've got multiplication and addition and division, that's when you've got to be very, very careful. So we get the answer, push the equal sign, and in a normal calculator it would give you the answer straight away. In this one, you have to make sure it goes to a decimal, and we're going to write down the answer as 1,314 Rand and 30 cents. Now, let's just make very sure that that fits into the table, because every year there's been an increase and it's fitted in progression. So we're at 1,314. So 1,314, yes, it fits in the middle. It seems to be the right answer. The last part of this question asks us to now calculate the percentage increase in weekly rate between the years. Make sure we get the right years, 2010 to 2011. The increase might not have been the same, but it's unlikely that the values are going to go down. So you increase one year to the next. If it was 5% in one year, it could have been 6% in the next year. It could have been 2% in the following year. But every year, the final values are going to increase. That's why we could look at the table. So now let's look at what we need. We need the difference in weekly rate. We need the initial weekly rate, and we're going to create a percentage. So this is percentage increase. First of all, we're looking between 2010 and 2011. So I'm going to write down, first of all, we want the difference, 2011, 2010. And we're talking about weekly rate. 2011, 2010, we've got it. I've already highlighted it in pink. That's the final one, 2010 for the weekly, 316. And I want the difference between that one, which I'm going to just star with the pink. That's my final. I want to get the difference between that and that. What do we mean by difference? We need to subtract the smaller one from the bigger one. So we're going to subtract from the 2011 the 2010 to give us the difference. So let's do that on our calculator, and we're going to start off by filling it in. 2011 gave us 316 and 80 cents. We're going to subtract from that 303 and 30 cents, and that will give me my difference. My difference is 13 Rand and 50 cents. So I'm going to put it down onto my calculation here. Have a look again, just to make sure. 13 Rand and 50 cents. What was my initial rate? Well, that was 303 Rand and 30 cents. There it is. 303 Rand and 30 cents. And we multiply that by 100 over 1. 100%, 100 over, we're getting that percentage to get us the percentage value. So let's just extend the page, give us some space to be able to write in the answer, get the calculator up, and there we go. So there's my answer for the first part of the question. I'm now going to divide that 13,50 by 303.3. Just delete that last one, didn't pick up the decimal point, equals, put it in, and now I need to multiply by 100. So multiply by 100, and that gives me the value that I can write as a percentage, which is equal to 4,45%. Let's just check that I rounded it off correctly. 4,4, the third 451. The third decimal place in the percentage was less than 5, so yes, I can round it off, and I know my answer is correct. Okay, I think that gives us an introduction to some basic finance questions. Let's go and see what the next question's got for us. And here we move on to a very important topic, the topic of interest. Let's see what this one has to say. The school governing body of Onverwacht High School was concerned about the high cost of transporting learners on educational excursions. They decided to raise funds, instead of taking out a loan, to purchase a school bus in 2 years' time. So they were concerned. They don't want to pay their interest to a bank. They'd rather raise money, earn interest on an investment, save it for 2 years' time, and then purchase. But there's a problem. Look what's coming. The current purchasing price of a vehicle is 650,000. That's almost R1,000,000. What they're asked to do is to calculate the purchase price of a new bus at the end of 2 years. They're just projecting it. If the purchase price increases by 7.2% per annum. Now, guys, they can't be sure that this is going to be the price. They're just doing a projection. What we have to do is to calculate that increases due to inflation. We don't know what inflation is going to do. We've got to give our answer to the nearest 100 Rand. Very important. Now look, they do give us a formula which is familiar to you, because what you recognize is that this type of increase, it's going to be a compound increase. So after 1 year there's going to be interest. We need to take the first year amount, get the interest, and then to that new amount add some more interest. Yes, we can use the formula and we can put it, but we need to do it on our calculator, and make sure that you can do it on even the simplest calculator. So I'm not going to use all the functions of the scientific calculator. I'm just going to do it very simply. So let's make sure that we've got, what is the value that we want? We know that the starting value is P. That's 650. We want to know what the final value is. So we're going to say P times 1 plus I to the power of n. And in this case, P was 650,000. Now, look very carefully. The 1 plus the interest, now the interest was set at 7.2%. So this isn't the only way that we can do it. We were writing it down as 7.2 over 100, which is your percentage, and the number of years is squared. What I'm going to do is, let's just say, let's take it for 1 year. Let's just work it out for 1 year. If this was 1, so after 1 year, how much is it going to be? Let's have a look. We're going to take our values, we're going to put that value into the calculator. This is for the first year, which is just like a simple interest calculation in a way. 650 000. Now, look what we've got to do. We've got to multiply that by, open the brackets, 1 plus 7, comma 2. Don't forget the comma 2. And then we've got to divide that part by 100. So this is quite easy on this calculator, because we're just putting the values in and we're getting an answer, and it will do the BOD maths for us. But I'm going to show you how you can do exactly the same thing if you don't have a calculator like this one, but I want to just write down this value. This is at the end of the first year. The price has gone up after 1 year to 696,800 Rand. Wow, that's quite an increase. Let's see what it's going to be after the second year. So instead of using that power, because on some calculators it's really difficult to put the power in, And if it was for 3 years, then you'd have to do it 3 times. Now, the examiners aren't likely to ask you that. They're probably only going to ask you for 2 years. So what's it going to be at the end of the second year? We're going to do exactly the same thing. We're going to say we want the A value. We've been given the P value. But now, remember, this is for the end of the first year. We're going to take 1 plus that interest, 7 comma, which is, sorry, let's just put it in the interest as a percentage. Okay, and we're going to do that again. But now, because this is for the second year, we're going to not put in the original value. We're going to say, what was the value at the end of the first year that we've got? That's the price. Now, 1 plus, let's just have a quick look at this. 7 comma 2 divided by 100. Now, if I was doing it on a simple calculator, very basic calculator, 4-step program calculator, I would start with what's inside the brackets. So that's exactly what I'm going to do now. Despite the fact that I've got a nice scientific calculator, I'm going to start with what's inside the bracket. And I'm going to say to myself, in the bracket I've got a fraction. So I'm going to start with 7 comma 2, and I'm going to divide it by 100. And that gives me an answer of 0,072. I'm then going to add 1 to it, which gives me this answer. So the answer that I've got, 1,072. And now I'm going to multiply that answer by 696,800. And that will give me the amount after 2 years. So if you wanted to, you could carry this on. But let's see exactly what the answer is. We're going to take that answer and multiply it by 696,800, which equals this huge number of 746,969,60. Now, there are 2 things that I wanted to just say at this point. We haven't finished yet. If they'd asked you for a third year, what could we do? Well, look here. This is very interesting. We could take this number that we've worked out. That number isn't changing. It's staying the same. To every year, we just simply take the final position at the end of the year, multiply it by 1,072. And each year it will grow and grow. That's what compound interest is all about. Now, let's get our final answer. Because do you remember that it said we must get it to the nearest 100 Rand? So have a look at this answer, and we see we're at 746,969. Now, 69 is over 50, so I need to get up to the next 100 Rand. But 900 will become 1,000. So in fact, this answer is going to change, and it's going to be 747,000. Okay? You can't round down. You can't say, guys, the target is 100 Rand less than this. Let's just say 746,900. No, you haven't saved enough. You're going to be 70 Rand off approximately short at the end of the day. So round up so you can make sure that you've got enough money saved to purchase that vehicle whenever you want to. Okay, guys, now we've dealt with some basic calculations and some interest, and I hope you're getting the idea of this finance section. We're going to go to a short break. After the break, we've got some more questions for you. Welcome back from the break, guys. Now let's dive into a slightly longer question and let's see what we can do. This is from paper 2, February 2014, and it was the original question 5. Let's see how much of this question we're going to do. It's about financial institutions and home loans. One of the ways of representing home loans is something called a factor table. Now, I'm sure you've seen this, but this is a nice exercise to be able to show how you can calculate home loans if you don't want to use fancy calculations. And it's a practical way that you can get. You can get apps or on a cell phone or a tablet that will allow you to do exactly the same thing. If you haven't got one of those devices, you can ask the bank to give you the table. Now, the interesting thing about the factor table is it's got this little formula. It tells you that you use the factor table to calculate the monthly repayment, where you take the monthly repayment is equal to the loan amount divided by 1,000 multiplied by the loan factor. So let's just take one example. So if you wanted to pay something off in 15 years and the interest rate was 15%, then the factor that you're going to have to use is 14. So when you plug that in to see what your monthly repayments is, you're going to have to say 14 over here. You're going to take your loan amount, whatever that is, divide that by 1,000, multiply by 14, and you will get your rate, your monthly repayments. Notice that the 14 as a factor is not the same as the interest. So you've really got to look at your table very carefully and make sure that you do not get them confused. Read off the table carefully. Now, let's have a look at the example. The National Credit Act stipulates that home loans, the home loan amount that a person qualifies for should be calculated based on their disposable income. Now, disposable income is your gross salary minus all your compulsory expenditure. So you're going to have to pay for your pension, your medical aid, your tax. If you've got any other debt, like car loans or that, take that all away. What's left over, that's your compulsory expenditure. And it gives you quite a high value. So what we recognize here is that we're told that Prognoshny is going to buy a house and has disposable income of quite a huge amount of 17,550 Rand per month. What we're asked to do is to calculate the maximum loan amount she qualifies for if she wants to take a loan over 25 years at an interest rate of 15.25%. So let's have a look at exactly what this is. We've got 15.25%. That's that one. And she's wanting to do 25 years. Just check it. Yes, there it is, 25%. So 25 years at least. Don't get the percentages. And so the factor is 13. So now let's use the calculation as we're going to work it out to get us the maximum loan that she's allowed to get. So very carefully, what we're going to do is we're going to say from the equation, there's the loan amount that we're wanting. Loan amount divided by 1,000 multiplied by the loan factor will give me my monthly repayment. Now, what we're asking is what is the maximum that she's allowed? Her monthly income, her repayment amount is based on her disposable income. So we know what she could get if it was a maximum. So we know that that's the 17. So let's just take that formula and say monthly repayment equals the loan amount divided by 1,000 times the factor. Now, I think we've got all the information that we need, but I must put the 1,000 in correctly. We've read off the information about the factor, put this value in as the monthly repayment maximum that she can take. We don't know what the loan amount. That's what we're trying to find. So we just substitute this into the equation for the moment. And we know that from where we looked at the table, 13 was the factor. So guys, when you're given an equation and it's asking you something that's not at the beginning on its own, write down the equation and put the values in. And you'll see it's so much easier because then you can work things through. Now, what do we need to get? We need to get the loan amount on its own. So what we're going to do is we're going to divide by 13. So let's just do it on the calculator. And we're going to say, let's take the amount that we got, which was 17,550. We're going to divide by 13. And then we're going to multiply by 1,000. And that will give us the amount that she can afford. And so using the calculation, we can say the loan amount for the loan is equal to 135,000. So that is 1,35 million rand. Okay? Quite a substantial amount. But that's a lot of money to be paying into the account. Now, she's obviously going to have to go and speak to her estate agent and see exactly what's happening, if she can really find something that's going to be useful for her and suit her needs. Now, let's have a look at the next question, which is more a theory question, but it's something for us to think about. It says, give 2 possible reasons why it would not be advisable to take out the full maximum loan that she qualifies for. So she's qualified for 1,350,000. Jackpot! She's so excited. The bank's approved her. But hold on. We don't know what is going to happen in the future. We don't know how the cost of living is going to increase. And so one of the reasons is that she's calculated all of her disposable income. She may have additional expenses. Let me give you an example. When you first move into a new home, you might suddenly find that you've got to call the electrician out to come and do some rewiring. You might find the plumbing isn't exactly what, and where are you going to find the money to pay it? So it's best not to go for the full amount, because you don't know that the price of fuel might increase in 2 months' time and become really expensive. She could have an accident. All of those things, she needs to have some money left over to do some saving. Now, remember, the other thing is that the thing that we talked about, disposable income, are the compulsory payments. It doesn't include things like entertainment or even groceries. It's those fixed things that financially we have to pay. So it's not a good idea for her to go for this full amount. The second thing is, because she's going for a bigger bond, a bigger amount, she's going to pay more interest. She will pay more interest. What's better? Here would be my advice to her. Go for a lower rate, even over a shorter time. So reduce the amount, and if you've got spare money, put it into the bond. Because if you pay more than the minimum, then that works as a savings process, and you can pay off your debt a lot faster. Let's move on to the next part of the question, 3.2. We're told that she's given 2 options from EP Bank and STL Bank, and she has to she's making a comparison. There's the different comparisons. She's decided she doesn't want the 1.3, she's going for 1.1. The one is over 25 years, the one is over 20 years. Now, the first thing that she's asked to do is to determine, showing all calculations, which home loan choice between these 2 banks, that's option 1 and that's option 2, she should, would be advisable for her to choose. And you've got to do that by calculating the missing value for X. Now, look at this. The X value is the total repayment. In a question like this, we mustn't forget that although it was 3.2, there was information given at the beginning of the question that will help us find the total repayment. In other words, we've got to go back to the factor table. Now, let's have a look at that. So given that information, that we were looking for the total repayment on 20 years at 16%. So there's 16%, and we want 20 years, so the factor, which is 13,91. Now remember that we can find the value of x, which is the total amount that needs to be repaid, by working out the monthly repayments first of all. So I'm going to say, what are the monthly repayments? Monthly repayments, that's going to be the loan amount divided by 1,000 multiplied by my factor. Now, be very careful here, because we're going to put the loan amount in, and you would see it's 1,1 million. So it's 1100, and then 3 zeros after that, divided by 1,000. And that means we cancel those 3 zeros off. That's going to give us that. Multiplied by the factor, which we've got from the table, which is 13,91. This will give us our monthly repayment, and we would be able to recognize that we've got the right monthly repayment. Let's just use the calculator to do that. We're going to take this value of 1100, because that we divided by 1,000, multiplied by 13,91, which is my factor. Now, guys, that tells me that she's going to have to pay out on a monthly basis the total amount of 15,301 Rand. But for how long is she going to have to pay that? Well, that's for 1 month. She's first of all going to have to pay that 12 times. So I'm going to take that answer, multiply it by 12. That will give me the amount that she pays in 1 year. But she didn't choose to just do it for 1 year, because that's not enough. It's not going to settle her debt. She's going to do it for 20 years. So we've taken it multiplied by 12 months, months to years, now by 20 years to get the total. So we're going to multiply by 20 years, and that will give us this amount. So that's the monthly repayment. So the total repayment is going to be equal to, and I'm just going to write it down, 3,672,240. That's a huge amount of money. Now, we've calculated X, and I'm going to put the value in there. 3,672,240. One now needs to make some decisions. One has to do some calculations, because we have to say, give a reason for the choice. What would you advise her? Well, if you just simply look at these two on face value, and you say, in this case, she's going to be paying up to 4,290,000. In this one, option 2, she's only going to pay 3,672,000. So you could justify it and say, I think she should go for SDL Bank. But somebody else might say to you, but hold on, guys, she's still got to live. Look how much she's having to pay. She's having to pay 15,301 Rand. Her disposable income that we were told in the first part of the question was only 17,550 Rand. That means that she's hardly got any money left to pay for her groceries, to pay for her petrol. Is this going to be the best option? Yes, it will save her if she does do it over the longer term, she's going to be paying less in the long run because the interest rate is less. But is it affordable? Well, let's go and have a look at the other option just very quickly. You see, this option was 25 years, and we could work out what the repayment is at 15.25%, which is a little less, 15.25%, and it's over a smaller amount of time, 25 years. Sorry, not 25, this one was 25 years. It's a longer period, 25 years, so she is going to end up paying more, but the factor now is 13. If you do the calculation, you will find what her monthly repayment is. So her monthly repayment, in this case, is going to be the 1.1 million divided by 1,000 multiplied by a lower factor. So I hope you can see this is going to give us a different value on the calculator. So let's put it in 1100, and I'm not going to put the million in. I'm just going to multiply that by 13, and it gives us the amount of 14,300 Rand. Now guys, that might mean the difference between living comfortably and not living very well at all. She's got an extra, look how much it is, 1,000 Rand, almost 1,000 Rand a month that she can save by extending the bond for an extra 5 years and paying a little less per month. That might be more comfortable for her. So I hope you can see that you can justify this answer in any way. You could either say one or the other. It doesn't really matter. The important thing is that you give a reason. And don't forget to give a reason. So when you've asked, which one would you decide? Well, you must write down. I would suggest go for STL because you're paying less overall, pay less overall. Or you can say, is that right? The STL was this one. Yes, that's the overall. Or you could say go for EP because the monthly repayments are better. More affordable. She's got more money to be able to put away. So, guys, I think that you need to be very careful about this sort of question and make sure that you get it sorted out. So, let's go to the last part. It tells us she can afford a monthly maximum of 13,250 for her monthly repayments. Determine, showing all calculations, the period and the interest rate that will best suit her needs. So now we're going to use the equation backwards. We're going to say she wants to pay only 13,255. We're going to use the calculation again. We know that this is 110,000 divided by 1,000, and we're going to chop that off, and we now need to find the particular loan factor. So we don't know what the loan factor is, and we're going to find it. So we've chopped those ones off. So what am I left with? Let's take this amount, the monthly repayments, and divide it by the loan, and that will give me my loan factor. Okay, if I do that, see how it works out. Take this again. She wanted to pay 13,255, and she wanted the loan for 110,000. Oh, sorry, we want to take the whole loan. Then we'd need to multiply by 1,000, but I'm just going to divide by that amount, take the correct amount, I've put that in, and that will give me my loan factor. My loan factor, if I got it right, is 12,05. 5. Now, look at the table. 12,05. There we go. Suggested interest rate, 14.25%. That's a nice manageable interest rate, although maybe you can get a better interest rate, depends on if you shop around, but it's over 30 years. Not the best thing because you're going to be paying lots of interest for a long time. Remember, when you're buying a home or you're buying a household, buying a flat or something like that, you need to try and pay it off as soon as possible. Makes sense in the long run. Right, time for a little break, and we'll come back for our last question. Welcome back, guys. We're going to do one last question now, and this is a question about income and expenses. Let's have a look at it, and let's see exactly how we're going. We're told that Mrs. Lowe is making jerseys, and she's bought a knitting machine for 5,600 Rand. It will cost her an average of 60 Rand, including wool, to make the jersey, and she is selling them to the school shop at 95 Rand a jersey. And the table below talks about 200 long sleeve jerseys. So the first thing is that we've got a list of expenditure, we've got a list of income, and it's on a table. The first question is for us to complete the missing values, both A and B. So A is the number of jerseys made. Now, what we need to do is we need to recognize that we know what the cost is per jersey. We also know that the income is very clear to work out. Now, you can do it in two ways. You know that the jerseys are being sold at 95 Rand a jersey. So if you want to work out the number of jerseys, you simply take the total income you'd expect and divide it by 95. So let's take that, because that's the simplest way of doing it. We're going to take 9,500 divided by 95, and we get A needs to be 100. Can we check it? Well, yes, it's always a good idea to check. So what we recognize is if we take 100 and multiply it by 60, let's do it the other way around. So we're going to take the cost of the jersey is 60 Rand, multiply by 100, and that gives us 6,000, but then we've got to add in the cost of the machine, which was 5,600, and if we add that in, 5,600, we will get 11,600, which is exactly the value that we've got over there. So we know our answer to A is correct. It's really good to be able to do that in an exam. You know that you've got something right. Just don't spend too long on it, because that can cost you in time. We need to get B now. So B, we're wanting to find how much money she would earn if she sold 180 jerseys. Well, that's really not difficult. We're going to say, to get B, we're going to take the 180 multiplied by 95, which is her selling price, and we're simply just going to put that onto the calculator, and we're going to see what we've got. 95 multiplied by 180 equals 17,100. 17,100. Okay, now those were straightforward, and I hope you can see that you can interpret from the table the given amount of information, and you can complete the table quite quickly. Now, the next part of the question says that we've been given a line graph. The line graph below shows Mrs. Lowe's income from the sale of 200 jerseys, or different amounts of jerseys, in fact. And it asks you to draw another line on the same grid representing the costs of making the jerseys. So we're going to take the costs, which are those values, and we're going to put them on a line. Now, I've already plotted the graph for you, and I just want to point them out to you. So there was the cost. The initial cost was the 5,600, and at each of the points, although that grid is very small, you're able to plot the points. You put in the points for each of the values, and that will give you a lovely straight line. And you can see that at this point over here, the costs are greater than the expenses, than the income. Sorry, the costs or expenses are greater than the income. So for that time, up to there, the costs are bigger than the income, because the line that was drawn in the original thing was the income. We've plotted the costs. It's only after this point, I'm going to put it nice and big in pink, at 160. Now, at that point, we've got the income is greater than the expenses or the costs. So what are those two sections? At the moment, on the left-hand side, this is a loss. We are not making a profit. But when we go onto this side, you're starting to make a profit. So where is the point where it changes from being a loss to a profit? Well, it's exactly at 160. At 160, that point is known as your break-even point. So please make sure that you understand that, and that you've got a very good sense of what's going on right there. Now, read the next part of the question, which is the important one. It says, determine the minimum number of jerseys Mrs. Nell should make if she's going to start making a profit. So we don't want her to be at break even. What's the minimum? If she makes 160 jerseys, she's at break even. She's got to complete the whole jersey. Nobody's going to buy a half a jersey. No, they want a whole jersey. So she has to sell 161 jerseys, and now she's made a little bit of profit. Obviously, the more she makes above the 161, she's starting to recover the expenses for the buying the knitting machine. Of course, over a long period of time, that machine's going to carry on lasting, and it's being paid for. She might have to pay for a few services, but her costs are going to come down and her expenses are going to come down. End result is she'll be making more profit. Well, guys, I hope that you've enjoyed this session. We've worked through a couple of exam paper questions, and we've done some revision on finance. Of course, there's more that you can do. Go and look at past papers, and particularly look at for questions on sections that we perhaps haven't had time to cover today, those that relate to tax, and you'll find that there are others as well. So from me, John, been nice being with you for now. So long, and all the best for your exams.